Peter Aldous.
Thank you very much, Dame Angela. It's a pleasure to serve with you in the chair. I congratulate the Honourable Member for Strangford for securing this debate. His case was very much location-specific. I thought he made his case well. I won't dwell on it longer, and I will wait with interest to hear my honourable friend, the Minister's response. Moving on, his securing of this debate is actually very, very timely, taking into account that it comes in the wake of what was a disappointing and unsuccessful auction round 5, and ahead of the publication next month of the draft allocation framework for auction round 6. Contracts for difference, Dame Angela, have been around for a very long time. They were originally developed in the UK in 1974 as a way to leverage gold. The context in which we are considering them today is their use as a means of supporting new low-carbon electricity generation as introduced by the Energy Act of 2013. Over the past decade, they have been remarkably successful. They have enabled the UK to become a global leader in the offshore wind sector, which is going to be very much the focus of my attention over the course of the next few minutes. CfDs have been the foundation stone for securing significant inward investment into coastal communities all around the UK, including in Lowestoft in my constituency, and the first 4 allocation rounds were remarkably successful. Unfortunately, this undefeated run came to an end with round 5, when no offshore wind bids were submitted, as the core parameters did not take into account the changed geopolitical situation in the light of COVID and the war in Ukraine and the ensuing uncertain inflationary global economic outlook. Dame Angela, it is vital that lessons are learnt and we get back on track ahead of allocation round 6. The work to do this should also be set in the context of the UK providing a response to the US's Inflation Reduction Act, and I would suggest that that should come in the Chancellor's statement next month, and I shall say a few words about that later on, as the energy industry is globally footloose, and whilst the UK has been very attractive to investors in many respects, and many respects it has been the come-to place. That said, we cannot rest on our laurels, and we are in danger now of being overtaken. As Keith Anderson, the Chief Executive of Scottish Power, has said, we can't possibly hope to outspeed the US, but what we can do is to outsmart and outpace them. Dame Angela, after the failure of auction round 5, it is vital that auction round 6 and 7 are successes. 1 failure is a blip, but 2 risks setting a trend that we will send a very negative signal to developers and investors, and the situation could then become very difficult to retrieve. This is particularly important for the continued development of the offshore wind industry off the East Anglian coast, with Scottish Power Renewables and Vattenfall's forthcoming projects in mind. Parameters that the government should take into account, I would suggest, are as follows. Firstly, the need to provide more clarity, consistency and certainty with regard to the longer-term pipeline of projects. This will give developers, supply chain businesses and infrastructure providers the confidence to invest, often way ahead of demand. A clear pipeline will help deliver long-term apprenticeship initiatives, will optimise the cost profile of development, and will better facilitate strategic investment in the national grid. Secondly, we need to improve the way that we incentivise developers to commit to invest in UK infrastructure and supply chains. This can be achieved through non-price factors in the CfDs, provisions in seabed auctions, and improved collaboration of supply chain plan delivery. Dusting off and reviewing the offshore wind sector deal originally signed in Lowestoft in 2019 would very much be welcome. Dame Angela, the feedback which I am receiving, which is welcome, is that ahead of the draft allocation framework for allocation round 6 being published next month, there is positive and ongoing engagement between my honourable friends, the Minister's Department, trade associations and developers. I would suggest that the key points that need to be addressed are as follows. The administrative strike price must be set at a level that takes account of market pressures so that this time developers do actually bid. Secondly, so as to give certainty to the market, there should be a ring-fenced pot for offshore wind. This is vital, taking into account the targets that government have set for offshore wind delivery. Thirdly, taking into account the missed opportunity with allocation round 5, the pot budget and parameters should be set so as to reflect the pipeline that is now available in order to ensure or in order to secure maximum capacity through allocation round 6. Dame Angela, work along these lines is necessary so as to correct the mistakes that were made in allocation round 5. However, at the same time, we cannot ignore the new world order. As I've mentioned, we cannot and should not get into a subsidy race to the bottom with the likes of the US, but what we can do is to work faster and smarter, building on the foundations that have been laid over the past decade. In the upcoming autumn statement, our energy policy framework should be adjusted, I would suggest, to include the following initiatives. Firstly, expanding reforms to capital allowances and introducing new tax incentives and grants. Secondly, supporting the UK supply chain through multi-year co-funding for the Industrial Growth Plan. And finally, as we discussed yesterday in the debate in this place, led by my right honourable friend, the member for Preseli, we need policies that unlock private investment in port infrastructure. Dame Angela, we invariably held offshore wind as a great British success story. And indeed, the way that the industry has developed over the last decade has been remarkable. Contracts for difference have been the cornerstone on which this success has been built. They have the advantage that they are flexible and can be adapted. Unfortunately, this did not happen for allocation round 5. It is important that this mistake is not repeated in round 6, and I hope that my honourable friend, the Minister, will provide the assurances that the industry is seeking. It is vital that he does, as offshore wind is bringing significant benefits to coastal communities such as Lowestoft, and it is imperative that it continues to do so.